All right. I think we are live, Dr. Mangone. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Hope you're well.
Yeah, so you're up in Pittsburgh. It's the Steelers are down on Latrobe, and they got an old man at QB. That must be all they're talking about in Pittsburgh these days.
Yeah, it is a big topic. We'll see how it goes. At least the good news is it's no longer cold. So it actually, it went basically from winter to summer.
Right.
We have very little transition zone, but it's good. Nope, everything going well. Practice going well, and building. And so looking forward to seeing people in Savannah for the AOFAS meeting.
Yeah, likewise.
Coming up,
a great meeting.
And so hopefully I've had several people who have actually picked up the audiobook masterclass and have actually responded to me in a favorable fashion. So that's good to hear. I'm glad I'm helping some people. So hopefully we can continue to educate people as to what this provides them, and hopefully they can find it helpful for a lot less than some other avenues cost to be educating about sales in the med tech world.
Right. Well, of course, the lobby audience tends to be a lot of young professionals, early career, maybe their first career in med device and med tech sales. And so something like Sales That Heal is a great resource for you as you are contemplating getting into the business, as you are beginning your career, as you're starting to grow your sales territory, to understand a physician's perspective on how the whole process works is really invaluable. And so in this webinar, we're going to kind of go, this is part 2 of our 3-part series. If you want to go back, go to the lobby's website, and you can go back and find the link to the old webinar we did, or you can buy the book, of course. But we talked a lot about preparation, preparing for a sales call, understanding your customer, mastering your product, and all that is, very important. And I think in this webinar tonight, we want to get into the sales process. How do you go from, okay, I've done my homework, I've done as much as I can do before I've knocked on the door for the first time. What do I do now? So what goals do you think a rep should have on their first sales call, in this first phase of the sales process where they're first getting to know the physician? What are some goals that are reasonable and a good rep should expect?
Well, I think probably with any relationship, as you start the relationship, right? Think about it with whether it be a friend, another colleague, even potentially a date, right? The most important thing you would like to do by the end of that first encounter is have an agreement that it's okay to meet again, right? And I think that's probably the number one thing that you want to walk away from. If you're able to get in the door, talk to the surgeon, the doctor, whoever, about the product, or just really, we're going to talk about not talking about the product very much initially, and we're going to talk about why that's important. But getting to have a meeting with the doctor and be able to have a conversation is to have an agreement that the conversation was valuable enough, and what you have provided or started to provide is valuable enough that they'll agree to meet you again, because that's the most important thing that we can accomplish in these first meetings. As we've discussed in the masterclass series, the process of sales is not a singular event.
Right.
It doesn't happen, in one visit, and then you do sales call visit 1, sales call visit. It's a process, and it's phasic, if you will. So there's a first phase, second phase, third phase. Each of them have their individual components, but there's also some overlap in those components.
Right.
So it's really about building that relationship. And to start with, the first thing you need to build the relationship is an agreement to meet again and continue to build that relationship. And number one, I think that is the number one thing, that if you can walk away from your first meeting with that scenario, then you've accomplished part of your goal.
Are there some pet peeves, some things that you should share, that you want to share with some, emerging sales professionals on what they shouldn't do at this early stage of when they're trying to make an appointment or trying to, get your attention? What are some things, what's some advice that you would give to do and not do?
So yeah, and I think we'll start. Let me first start. We can say a couple of things about doing, or about not doing, but we can do it in a more positive way of doing, and then we'll kind of talk about not doing. But I think when you're talking about getting the meeting, right, you want to get into the door to talk to somebody. So number one, I think you need to treat the physician's employees or the physician's administrative staff, whoever you're interacting with at that level, with the utmost of respect, right? Because that plays a big role in how the physician will view you. And we, whether it be in private practice, whether it be academics, whatever role, we work with these people every day. My secretary, my nurse, my medical assistant, my PA or nurse practitioner, advanced practitioner people, we work with them all the time. And they will let us know if somebody rubs them the wrong way. And so the number one thing is if you as a Medtech device person come in and you think, well, I'm just going to be, kind of be aggressive with the staff, and then when I get to the doctor, I'll turn on the charm. That is not a pathway to success, at least in the vast majority of offices, right? Now, that doesn't mean you can't be an advocate for yourself, and you can't advocate for trying to get a meeting with the physician in some way, shape, or form, but you have to do it in a respectful manner, and you have to realize that the staff there is it's a team effort, and the physician will hear about any aberrant behavior or difficult to deal with behavior. And that's just not the old, you never have a second chance to make a first impression, right?
That's a good point.
And so that's I think number one is treat them with respect. Number two, if you get a chance to speak with the physician to ask for a meeting, right? You certainly don't want to start your sales pitch with right away. You want to find out, when can I have a meeting? Find out, ask them some question about when is the best time to meet with you. When would be a good time? Most of us, not everybody, but most of us are willing to meet and talk to people about new technology and opportunities. We're generally okay people, but you have to identify, just like we talked about preparation wise, finding out where is this person in their career? Where are they in their life? Who are they as a person? Trying to do your research beforehand, talking to other reps that are your colleagues about what worked for Dr. A versus Dr. B, identifying when's a good time to meet, and then try to meet on their terms. So if it's better to meet that surgeon in the morning at their office before clinic, it may be that may be a better time when they can focus and concentrate on what you have to tell them, as opposed to at lunch when they have when that particular person doesn't have any break for lunch, right? Now, there are some surgeons who take a break for lunch, and they specifically take time out, and they have the time during that time frame, or maybe it's after clinic. So trying to find out what works best, and then interact with the staff and the doctor to get that set up. And those are, they seem basic. Don't get me wrong. It seems basic, but at the same time, I think those are areas that still remain struggles in terms of trying to, tell the doctor, well, I'm gonna get a lunch and meet with you at your office in 2 weeks with a lunch. Well, that's great, but you know what? That's not a great time for me, because I'm going to devote about 3 minutes of time to you, because I'm always behind in my clinic. And if you'd just come maybe and talk to me a little bit, and had maybe set up a 5-minute meeting, to say, hey, can I meet with you 5 minutes before your clinic, just to say, hey, Dr. Mangone, I'd like to meet with you about some of the stuff I have. When's a good time in the next couple of months for me to meet? Do you like to meet in the morning, the afternoon, lunch?
Yeah.
And that little bit of information, you then can identify when can I get the doctor's attention and be able to actually spend time selling. Because if the doctor is constantly being interrupted and is worried about getting back to clinic, or worried about getting back into the OR, that means they're not devoting attention to what you have to say. They're distracted.
No, they're not listening to you.
And that's not an efficient use of your time.
Yeah.
You can mark it down as a visit to that doctor, but I doubt it's going to be highly effective.
Yeah.
And so trying to figure out whether again, you can talk to, we're usually approachable around the OR, but not necessarily to talk about product,
Mm.
Maybe again, hey, I was wondering if you're in between cases. I was wondering if I can talk to you. Is there a good time to set up a time to meet with you in your office? What's the best? Where do you like to meet? When do you like to meet? Morning, day, evening? What works best for you? And the reps that I've had are most successful that are open to that. And then I can look at my schedule and I can say, yeah, why don't we meet? I've got an admin time on Monday from 8 to noon. Why don't we meet at 8:30 in the morning on Monday? Then I can devote the time to actually listen to you. And I'm not worried about getting to a different, room. So I think, that's another quick, in that first, trying to set up, if you will, set up the first meeting. Now, when we get to the first meeting, that's a little bit different, right? That's and I definitely, I think, want to talk about positives before I talk about negatives. Most of the negatives, I'll be honest with you, are relatively self-evident. But don't be rude, show up on time or early, be prepared, don't come. And if I ask a question about something that you don't have the answer to, or that you don't have a reasonable expectation of having an answer to, know your competition, know who you're competing against, what their products are. Those are all those preparation aspects that we talked about, right? But probably what do you do in the first meeting is probably most important. And I think the first sales call, the phase of the first sales call, really is about developing the relationship with the surgeon. Right? It's about identifying who am I selling to, right? Who is the surgeon? What is their practice like? What do they normally operate on? What is the pathology that they normally see? Do they have a practice that's focused on reconstructive orthopedics, let's say, or is it a practice focused mainly on elective? Is it mainly trauma? Is it diabetic foot care? Is it, so if I'm a doctor who doesn't see any diabetic foot wounds, right, then coming into the door and trying to sell me your diabetic foot ulcer package or your wound care package is probably not an efficient use of your time as a rep. Now, again, that doesn't mean you don't have that initial meeting, right? But during that initial meeting, you're identifying yourself. You're identifying, is this doctor a good use of my time, right? Is this is setting up, or if us agreeing on to having another meeting, is this a useful part of my job and time? Am I going to be able to develop a beneficial relationship from this doctor in terms of getting sales for my product? And again, if I'm somebody who sees no diabetic foot wounds and no wound care, then once you find that out, you have to make that initial sales call to find out. Now, hey, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the time. I've met you, and we can maintain some sort of collegial professional relationship. But you spending more time pitching me on your particular product in that endeavor isn't helpful.
Yeah, it's not the time for that, is it? Not at this phase. It's too
not
early.
At that phase, and it may not be the right doctor to see in the future, right? I may not be the right doctor for you to sell to. Yeah. And if that's okay too, because you've identified that's not where I'm going to have useful time. And I need to find another physician and go interview. If you interview another physician, find out about another doctor. Now, hopefully you've been able to identify some of that beforehand, but sometimes you just don't know until you're in the call, right?
Right.
So identifying, okay, where are they? What do they practice like? What do they like to do? What do they not like to do? What are sources of frustration in their practice, right? You can ask them, hey, what are the things what are the operations you really like to do, Dr. Mangone? Oh, I love to do MTP fusion. I like to do ankle replacement. What are procedures that are somewhat frustrating? And just trying to learn about foot and ankle, learn about, not only what I do individually, but also foot and ankle, because what you learn from me about, let's say, as a foot and ankle orthopedist, you can also potentially apply to other people, right? So when you go to see another surgeon, you don't have to say Dr. Mangone said, but let's say you see 10 doctors over the course of a month, and all of them identify, procedure X as a procedure that just doesn't have a good solution.
Right.
Well, then when you see the next doctor in the line, you can say, I've met with a number of foot and ankle surgeons in your region, and all of them seem to indicate that product or procedure X is really a source of frustration for them. Is that the same for you? Is that something that you also find frustrating, or is that something that so it gives you some information you can use not only in your individual relationship with that doctor, but also as a way to broach subjects with other doctors in that first sales call. But really it's about listening in that environment, listening more than speaking, in that first visit. It's about asking some questions and then sitting back and listening to that doctor's responses, and then moving the conversation from there. There's obviously some basic information you need to know, but also, where does that conversation take you? Okay, well, so you said, doctor, that procedure X is a source of frustration. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? What is frustrating for you?
That's an important point. I want to probe that a little bit, which is there's kind of an art and science to asking good questions. You can ask a close-ended question, you're going to get a short answer, and that's going to end the conversation. What advice can you give for asking good questions, leading questions, open-ended questions, things that really, get the conversation flowing in a positive way?
Yeah, I think most of us as surgeons, for better or for worse, we're fairly confident people. That's kind of the generally, not a stereotype, but there's a certain level of confidence, a certain level of knowledge, and for better or for worse, sometimes we think we're more right than we are. And with that in mind, Jim Samarco, who was my mentor as my fellowship director and mentor, he used to tell about patients. He used to tell me, let the patients tell their story. They want to tell you their story, right? That is why they're there. They want to get better. They want to tell you their story. So similarly, as a surgeon, when you as a rep, right, if you ask, do you like this or not, you're going to get a yes or no answer, right? Mm-hmm. But if you say, well, tell me what are your sources of frustration with procedure X? Now, at that point, the surgeon, most of us, we want to discuss our successes and failures. We want to discuss what's good and bad. We may have thoughts about solutions for those problems. We may not, but in general, there's some benefit to having the surgeon tell their story. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's just like the surgeon, it's just like that patient, you as the rep, you're there to find out what is the surgeon's story. And by listening to their story, then the great salespeople are able to then identify within that story, where is the opportunity for me to help move this story towards success. Mm. And that can be anything from a product to a service to a relationship, which may allow me to build a relationship with another surgeon somewhere else, right? It may, if I'm a young surgeon, it may be that I want to build a relationship. The best thing for me in your relationship might be that you have a great medical education program. Mm. And for me, getting to know you allows me to be able to get into some medical education programs at your company that then helps me become a better surgeon, but also through those education classes become an opportunity for your company to showcase its materials, right? So it might not be that is a direct sales to you that day, right. But where do you see the opportunity? So as if it's a young surgeon talking and they're talking about, well, my biggest frustration is I feel like I got out of fellowship. I could do these procedures and now it's so difficult. I feel like I'm struggling to, I feel like I can't seem to, get the ORs to work right and this and that and the other. And then I don't have any access to cadavers. I can't train on these procedures beforehand. Ding, ding, ding. There's as you're listening, you're kind of cataloging, well, here, okay, there's an opportunity for me to develop this relationship further, right? Hey, right. By the way, we have a medical education, you're not going to say that right away. Again, this is step one. You're just listening, taking notes, mental notes, and then you're going to sit down after the visit and you're going to kind of debrief yourself, maybe with your manager, maybe not. And you're going to try to identify okay, based upon what this doctor said, where are the opportunities for us to provide solutions for those sources of frustration? Some of which may be direct product related, but some of which may be training related, some of which may be getting a product into the OR. I think I've told Mike this story in the past. I can't remember if I tell it in the book or not, about my first interaction with Mike Brown, who was my rep for a long time. And he showed up, and I was having trouble getting the products that he was a new employee for this company. And I was having trouble getting this product into the system. And I looked at him and said, hey, what I need you to do is get the product in the system. I said, I'll use the product if you can get it in the system, but I need somebody to devote time to getting it in the system. So, now for him, I was able to give him a direct command, if you will. This is what I need from you. Right. But at the same time, if even if I don't say that, if you're talking, well, well, my frustration is getting products into the system. Okay, well, how can I help with that? So I guess answering, those open-ended questions. What are sources of frustration? What do you find to be the things that you enjoy about what surgical procedures do you enjoy? What surgical procedures do you find need, there's some opportunity for improvement, or you feel like could be done better? Just finding out. No different than if you're developing a relationship with a friend or a colleague. You want to say, where'd you grow? I'm not saying you ask the surgeon where you grew up, but again, if you're a person who you're developing a friendship, you're going to be asking open-ended questions. Where'd you go to school? What'd you love about Davidson, Pete? Why'd you go to Davidson undergrad? Because you're finding out when that patient answers the questions. If you say, well, I really loved it because I loved the honor code, and I really loved the intimate relationship with my friends that I developed because it was a small school. Well, that tells you what kind of person I am.
Right.
It tells you the things that I value by answering that question without you having to say, do you value honesty and integrity?
Right.
And so you can garner that information from the answers that you get from the physician.
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about in the audio series that at the end of this phase, and like you said, the phases overlap. A good way to sort of close it and then reach for the next opportunity is, can we agree that this is a source of frustration for you? Trying to finish the call on a positive note. Can we agree that this is a source of frustration for you? Would you mind if I go research this a little bit and come back to you with some options to consider? Is that a good way to sort of close that phase and nudge the sales process along a little bit? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and you can say and you can say it without necessarily even saying, "Can we agree?" And you can get, so you can say, "Well, Dr. Mayo, I appreciate the time you spent. We've been talking a lot. What I've heard you say is, am I correct? What I heard you say is that procedure X is really a frustrating area for you, and the things you said were frustrating was that the equipment, the ancillary equipment that goes along with it is difficult. The rep that you've had in the past just doesn't seem to be able to teach the staff what's going on. They've had difficulty getting the products into your system, and you've found that the screwdriver on that set just doesn't work very well. Are those? Did I get all that correctly? Is that and so that's a way, without having to say, do we agree? But you're getting that agreement by saying, did I hear you correctly? Right. And then or at the end, based on what you've told me, the 3 most frustrating things to you are X, Y, and Z. Is that correct? Right? Did I hear you correctly? Is there anything else I'm missing there? Right? And so and then being able to say, well, that's terrific. And like you said, would you be okay with meeting again with me? I'm going to go back. I don't know if my company has solutions for this or not. Even if they have solutions for it, I don't know if my company and what their solutions are. I have an idea. I've got an idea. I know what our products are. I think there are some things that might be able to help you with these sources of frustration. But let me go back. If it would be okay if we met again in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks, whatever, and we went over, some of those options that we might have. right? In regards to that. And yeah, sure. Okay, great. Yeah. Let's set up a time to meet or this or that, so, or it may be that, hey, I've got to do some research with the VAC. I'm going to research with the VAC committee, find out what their processes are, come back and see what I can do to try to, understand it better so that I can help you, with what you're describing as your difficulties getting it into the system. I'm going to talk to my other reps in other hospitals and different systems that maybe are similar to yours, and see what they've done in the past. And so I'll do a little research. Can we agree to meet again in like 3 weeks and go over that? So I think those are ways to summarize what you've said, what you've agreed upon, and then you've agreed to get another meeting. And again, you're not to the point where you're saying, I have a solution for you, right?
Right.
Because that's, you don't want to, in general, tell the surgeon, I have a solution for you. Ultimately, you want the surgeon to find the solution, right? You want to present the surgeon with options and let the surgeon make that decision, because then what you've done is you've created a situation where the surgeons come up with the answer, right? And they're much more likely to buy into their own decision than they are your decision. You're going to lead them that way. You're going to lead them with information. You're going to direct the conversation toward opportunities for them to hear the solutions that you bring to the table.
Right.
I do think one of the things that we talked about briefly in our chapter as well is during this first visit, you want to try, if possible, to stay away from negative terminology. Right. So if you can say things like we talked about, well, tell me about sources of frustration, as opposed to what surgeries do you struggle with, Dr. Mangone? Because none of us as surgeons or people, we really don't want to we don't want to say, I'm not good at doing this procedure, right? Yeah. Nobody, some
Especially
of us,
we don't have a relationship yet.
Right. I don't know that I want to disclose to you that I suck in this procedure, or I feel like a dodo, or I feel, or the last time I did it, it didn't go well, or something like that.
Right.
But you can certainly use terms like sources of frustration. What areas, what operations do you enjoy doing? What operations do you not enjoy doing? Why? Again, open it. Why do you not enjoy doing that operation? Well, the equipment for the thing, the drill guides aren't good. I can never get the drill in the right. So you're identifying objective things there, and not asking the surgeon to kind of say I'm not good at something. Now, again, some people are okay with that, but many people, that's going to leave a negative impression, at least when you don't have any, again, think about it. If you're meeting a friend or meeting a colleague for the first time, if you, basically focus on the negative and you're like, well, tell me what personal habits of yours, your wife or husband doesn't like, I mean,
the way to win friends and influence people.
Exactly. Right. But at the same time, you can identify, things, but doing it in a way that is more of a way to identify, areas that can create frustration, areas that are barriers to you accomplishing your goal, right? What are your goals? What's important to you as a surgeon is another question that you can ask. That's an open-ended question. Right. What's important to you, Dr. Mangone, for your rep, right? What is important to you for when you have your medical device rep? What are the most important things that the medical device rep does for you, right? And leaving that as an open-ended question, because one surgeon may be get it in the hospital, get it in the hospital, get it in the hospital, right? Yeah. Another surgeon may be, I want my rep to be at every case. I need them to help my staff know how to do things. Another one may be, I want you to keep me updated on all the new innovative things that are going on. Mm-hmm. And I want you to bring me the latest and greatest of stuff as soon as you possibly can. So knowing what, and again, by asking that question open-ended, you're going to hear what are the values that I individually find important in my reps. And again, it's different for different individuals. And now that next visit, you start to tailor where you go and where you spend your time and energy, which is essentially your priorities, based upon the priority of the surgeon, right? If they think training the staff at the hospital is the most important thing, then you need to bring back you need to eventually, as part of this process, find a solution for that as one of your most important things. If I tell you one of the most important things for me is training the staff, and you come back and tell me the next visit, the first thing out of your mouth is that it costs less to put this plate on than that plate, and therefore that's an important thing. Well, then you haven't listened to my values. Right. You haven't listened to me. And the message back to me in that regard is, I don't care what your values are, Dr. Mangone. I'm not interested in what you're interested in. I'm only interested in what I'm interested in. Right. In that situation, that's probably not going to further the relationship.
Right. That's right. Because you haven't listened. I mean, and you also haven't built the trust and credibility. Right. I mean, so what I'm hearing you say is, in that early phase, we're trying to build trust and credibility. We're certainly listening more than speaking. We're trying to find those sources of frustration. That could take weeks. That could take months, right?
Yeah. I mean, ideally it should take 1 or 2 visits, right? But you're right. Sometimes, and it isn't an ever expanding process, right? You're always probing and asking questions.
Yeah.
And identifying, again, like any relationship, you don't learn everything about the person right away, but you can identify within the first couple of visits, what are the values that are important to them? Who is this person? Now that you've got a broad picture from looking at them on the internet and talking to friends and that, but now you've interacted with them. Who is the real Pete Mangone, right? What does that surgeon particularly, find important? And then thirdly, agreeing to meet again, but then where do I spend my time? And again, it's no different. Let's say we've all done it. We all did it in college. We did it in high school, right? If you're in a class and the teacher says, we've had 10 chapters during this semester, and these 3 chapters are the most important chapters, I think are the most important chapters in the book, right? Then when you go to study for the test, I hope you spend more time on those 3 chapters than you do on the other 7.
Right.
Because you're not going to devote the equal amount of time to each of those chapters, because the person who's the teacher has just told you should pay more attention to these 3 things, these 3 chapters. So, priorities are defined by time and money. And so your priority at that point is, I need to spend more time on those 3 chapters because that's what the person has said is important. They're going to test on. So no different. You're interacting with the surgeon, you're listening, you're finding out what are the surgeon's priorities. Now you're going to go back after visit 1 or 2, or phase 1, and you are going to now say, okay, this person values 1, 2, and 3. Now, do I have some potential solutions for those priorities?
Yeah.
Right. And if you do, great. And if you don't, that's okay. That doesn't mean you can't continue the relationship, but that relationship may be a different relationship now. It may be one where you're building a relationship. And honestly, if you came to me as a rep on the 2nd or 3rd visit, and you said, hey, Dr. Mangone, it's been great meeting with you and all that, but I've looked, and honestly, right now, I don't have any solutions for your I don't have anything that's going to be important to you, right? Here are some products I do have, and if you ever feel like it becomes important, but I don't have anything right now that really is going to help solve problems for you in what you've defined to me. And so I'd love to stay in contact with you, because I don't know, at some point in the future, my company might come up with some things that may be a priority to you. And I'd love to kind of continue to meet with you every so often, right? Maybe every 6 months, and just kind of see where things are and if there's any solutions that we could provide. But to me, that's refreshing.
Right. Yeah. It's nice. It's just honest.
Somebody who's honest, and I'd be more than willing to meet with somebody every 6 months, but at the same time, you don't need to meet with me every 3 weeks or every month, because you need to spend your time going to talk to the other doctor who may have priorities that more meet your product. And then when you come to me and you do have a product, you feel like there may be a solution based upon those priorities, and you come back to me and you say, hey, are those priorities the same? Are you still having the same things? Yeah, it's the same thing. You know what? It's 9 months later. I think we may have something coming out here that could help with problem number 2 that you defined for. Now I'm going to trust you more, right? I'm going to say, yeah, come on, talk to me. I'm happy to meet with you because you were honest with me and you didn't just try to take up my time with telling me about products that are not a priority for me and aren't going to be able to be utilized in my practice, right? And then if somebody else says to me, hey, how's Mike Donahoe as a rep? I'm going to say, you know what, honest guy. He came and talked to me. He didn't have a product, didn't try to shove anything down my throat. He said that, he'd get back to me if there was something, but he listened to me. He understood what I needed, and he realized that there wasn't anything. If he's got a solution for you, I'd trust him.
Yeah.
So now you gather that and you're able to create that trust, because that's really what you're ultimately building here, right? In any relationship, you're building trust. And, that occurs through first, if you go back to the Stephen Covey realm, first seek to understand before being understood. And so understanding who your customer is and what they value now allows you to set your priorities and find the solutions that meet the priorities of the person that you're, involved with.
Yeah, that's very well said. I think what we'll do is I want to spend a lot of time on the value analysis committee in part 3, because that's such an important part of moving medical technology through the sales process and getting it in to be used by the hospital. And there's a whole lot we can unpack over there. But as we start to kind of wrap up, as a sales rep who has now gotten to that stage, they're ready to present the solution to you. What are ways in which, what's some advice you can give to reps who come to you, or, how do I set that up? What are some tools that you like to see? What are some programs, some technology, if you will, that allows reps to do a really good job presenting those solutions to you? Is there any final word or advice you'd give for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you move to those second and third phases that we talk about in the book, and that's where we get in much more detail there, what you're really doing is, is creating that environment where the surgeon or the doctor figures out the solution through discussion with you. So you get that first phase, then you come back to the doctor in the second phase and you say, hey, doctor, let me summarize again what we heard last visit. I understand, you told me that this is a problem, or this is an area of frustration. This is an area of frustration. This is an area of frustration. What if, I've been looking through some stuff, and what if I had a product, if you told me the most important thing for you in fixing a big toe is the alignment, the drill guides, and the thinness of the plate, right? What if I told you that we may have a product that solves all 3 of those? Is that something you would be interested in? Oh yeah, I'd definitely be interested in that. If you had a product like that, I would. And then what you're doing is you're getting agreement from the surgeon. You're getting agreement from the surgeon that they're open to a solution to their problem. Right. You could possibly slide in that particular plate in that area, but at the same time, what you're really doing is you're establishing the thought process, so that you're basically creating it that, hey, this isn't me that's telling you this is a solution for you. This is you as the surgeon telling me that this is a solution. So if I'm correct, you've told me that this is what you're looking for, this is what you're looking for, this is what you're looking for. Now, if you would agree that if these three things are the most important things to you, if we had a product like that you would be willing to look at and possibly use it. Yes. Yeah, I would be. Okay. Now, all of a sudden, you've got the appetite set up for the surgeon to then be ready for you to show the solution.
Right.
And whether you do it in that visit or whether you do it in the next visit, is that becomes the third phase, which becomes now you're presenting the surgeon with the solution that they have defined.
Mm-hmm.
Not you. You haven't sat there and told them, oh, this is a great plate because it's thin, it's this and that and other. What you've done is you've let the surgeon tell you, these are my priorities. Now you have a product that meets those priorities, and you're going to show the surgeon those. And it creates a cognitive dissonance in the mind of anybody. If they've agreed that these are important things, and then you show them that this product has the important things that they've defined, now, the surgeon has this battle going on in their brain of, well, yeah, I said this was important. This was important. And now this is here. I guess I should probably try to use it. Because it meets the criteria that I defined, right? That I defined as important. And that may be different from one surgeon to another, right? The other surgeon may say I need a low cost implant that doesn't take very much time to put in,
mm-hmm.
and it looks sexy on X-ray, it looks great on X-ray or something like that. Or I don't want to see it on X-ray. I want it to be, translucent on X-ray. Okay.
Right.
Well, now again, those are three different things, and you've got to come up for a solution for that. So I think in essence, what you're doing is presenting the surgeon with product at the end that is really meeting what they have defined as important.
Right.
And that's really the key as you develop that relationship, understanding what the surgeon wants, going and finding out where that can fit into your repertoire, and then just trying to find one solution, for one solution, one place to get in. Don't try to sell everything to me on the first.
Right. Yeah.
Just trying to find a solution for one problem, because again, that's how you're going to build trust, right? If I have a friend of mine and I say, hey, let's meet for coffee or something, if somebody that you just met, you're trying to form a relationship, you're going to say, let's meet for coffee, right? Okay. You go to meet for coffee. They don't show up on time, right? Or they don't show up that day, or something happens, right? That erodes that credibility. So that if the person says, hey, let's go to a vacation together, it's going to cost $10,000 each and spend a week. Am I going to commit to a week-long vacation with somebody where I have to spend a bunch of money if I can't even trust this person's going to show up to a coffee?
Right.
Probably not. Right. So winning small battles, right? Creating small victories is the way. And that starts with the initial listening, bringing back solutions that are focused on the priorities I find important as a surgeon, and then being able to present that solution in a way where it allows me to make the decision, not you as the rep being the decision maker, because then it's not because it's an arrogance issue. It's just more as the surgeon. It's like when I have patients, I want patients to buy into the solution, right? They have to be part of the solution. If they're not part of the solution, then if something goes wrong, guess who's to blame? Right? I am, because I, quote, force this solution on them. Whereas if they're part of the solution, they're much more likely to work with me. Mm-hmm. And as a surgeon, if they're part of the decision-making process to come to this conclusion for a particular product, now, if it's a little bit finicky, if I've got to, there's a little learning curve to it, I'm much more likely to go through that learning curve without getting frustrated at you, the rep, because I know that ultimately it was my decision to use this.
Right.
So it helps in the whole process of developing that relationship in a mature and and in a mature and focused manner, so that the surgeon is ultimately the person who has to feel safe and trust that you will deliver on the promises that you bring.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's just such good advice for anybody in sales, anybody in medtech sales, and especially for, the lobby members who are younger, tend to be younger in their career and getting started. Hearing from a physician some of these little pearls, I think, are going to help them shorten their personal learning curves, keep them out of trouble, and help them be more successful. So we would invite any of you to, if you want to listen to the whole audiobook series, it's amazing. There's a 20% discount for lobby members. You can see the link here in the on the show, and we could put it in the comments afterwards. Dr. Mangone, thanks so much for your time. This was great. So we will do this again in about a month. We'll get into some of the important parts of, the value analysis process and making sure that the first case goes successfully, and maybe some final comments on, ensuring a long-term successful career. So thanks again for your time and for your commitment to helping these young reps get up to speed and be successful.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Kendi, for the time in the lobby. And I think, this was really, as we talked about last time, a passion project. And hopefully it can help people be better at what they do, because the better they are at what they do, the better I am at helping to take care of my patients. And that's why we call this Sales That Heal, because like we talked about, you as individual members and MedTech device sales are integral parts of the healing of the patient. Right. So anything that I can do to try to help educate the next generation of MedTech device people to be better stewards of the sales process and carry with it great trusting relationships, then the better off we're all going to be in terms of the care we're able to provide patients.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thanks again.